time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography.
Would you just try to summarize what states they were in and what periods of time?
I just really will summarize it. California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Florida between 1973 and 1978.
Of the 30 that you were involved in, can you have an idea of how many were actually buried?
Well, that's a good question. Gee, 10.
10 burials of the 30, about 30%?
Just roughly, I mean, I'm just, yes.
Okay. In a couple of the cases, and I'm not sure how many, but you opted to sever the heads from the victims. And how many were there, do you recall, of 30?
Perhaps half a dozen.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report live from the Justice Building in Miami, Florida. Deliberating for 6.5 hours, the jury returned to the courtroom just past 9:30 Eastern Time Tuesday night to announce its decision.
The verdicts, Madam Clerk.
The Circuit Court of the 2nd Judicial Circuit in Napoleon County, Florida, case number 78670. The State of Florida versus Theodore Robert Bundy, verdict. We, the jury at Miami-Dade County, Florida, this 24th day of July, A.D. 1979, find the defendant, Theodore Robert Bundy, as to count 2 of the indictment, murder in the first degree upon one Margaret Bowman, guilty as charged. As to count 3 of the indictment, murder in the first degree upon one Lisa Levy, guilty as charged, so say we all, Rudolph E. Trimble Foreman.
They refuse to perceive me as being anything that approaches being normal.
At 2:20 this afternoon, the case was handed to the jurors with a decision before them of whether to sentence convicted murderer Theodore Bundy to life imprisonment or death.
Defendant, please step forward. The court finds that both of these killings were indeed heinous, atrocious, and cruel, in that they were extremely wicked, shockingly evil, vile, and the product of a design to inflict a high degree of pain and utter indifference to human life. This court, independent of, but in agreement with, the advisory sentence rendered by the jury, does hereby impose the death penalty upon the defendant, Theodore Robert Bundy. Take care of yourself, young man.
Thank you.
I say that to you sincerely. Take care of yourself. It's a tragedy for this court to see such a total waste, I think, of humanity that I've experienced in this court. You're a bright young man. You made a good lawyer. I'd love to have you practice in front of me, but you went another way, partner. Take care of yourself. I don't have any animosity to you. I want you to know that. Court will be in recess until Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.
Everybody remain seated. The judge is out of the court.
I don't really feel like I have any really cute insights or observations or analyses to add to what's happened this afternoon. I'm tired, sad, and even now I am both fascinated with and angry at myself for falling into that role.
there is yet another case titled The State of Florida versus Theodore Robert Bundy.
This time, Bundy is accused of killing Lake City schoolgirl Kimberly Leach.
The Kim Leach trial was the first murder case that I actually tried as a prosecutor. People criticize us, saying, why are you wasting the county's money prosecuting him when he's already got the death penalty? You get 2 death penalties, you got twice as much chance of one standing up. To make certain that he was executed. The strategy of the trial was very simple. We had tons of evidence. It was an eyewitness that saw Bundy loading Kim Leach into the white van at the junior high school. And in that white van that he was driving was a blood stain. The blood type was the same as Kim's blood type. Numerous fibers from the clothing from Kim Leach's body were found on the van carpet. Fibers from Bundy's blue blazer was found on Kim's clothing. Shoe tracks, there was mountains of evidence against him.
Wearing a blue bow tie and a big grin, Theodore Bundy faced the jury for the last time.
Bundy defended himself, and that did not go over well with the jury. He displayed a tremendous amount of arrogance. One thing that he did was his impromptu wedding ceremony between him and one of his witnesses, Carol Boone.
The defense called only one witness, Carol Boone. Acting as his own lawyer, Bundy questioned her about his character. She said he's a kind, warm, patient man, a very positive part of her life. Then the convicted man popped the question.
Carol, do you want to marry me?
Yes.
And I want to marry you?
Yes.
And I do want to marry you.
He said you did.
Bundy went on questioning Boone. The prosecution called the marriage proposal a charade and asked the jury to consider the timing of the announcement.
I thought at the time this was simply a ploy. How could you possibly vote the death penalty on my wedding day? And the second thing he did was in final argument before the jury, he spread his arms out like this and compared himself to Jesus. Well, the jury didn't appreciate it at all. The next morning, then we had a verdict. And I was pumped. I had been sweating bullets until the judge called us back into the courtroom.
It is the sense of this court as to count one of the indictment that you, Theodore Robert Bundy, be adjudicated guilty of murder in the first degree, and that you be sentenced to death for the murder of Kimberly Diane Leach. Yes.
Bundy sat with his back to the judge during the reading of the recommendation. Then, one last outburst as the jury was being released.
What is the jury?
Tell the jury that they were wrong.
And he was white as a sheet. They brought him around to the electric chair, and they strapped him down, and he was allowed to say some final words. He says something about sorry he caused so much trouble. Then they lower the skull cap with the black hood over his head. The guy on the phone gives the high sign, and they throw the switch. And as the electricity coursed through his body, you could see his fist tighten with the thumb between the two fingers. And I remember thinking at that time, I wonder how many throats that fist is tightened around. When the electricity was turned off, a doctor unbuttoned the front of his shirt, put a stethoscope to his chest, and finally stepped back and pronounced Bundy dead. And then, I think it was the warden, someone announced that the death penalty had been carried out. I'm ashamed to admit that I was elated. Well, I hope I'm never that happy over the death of another human being ever again.